The power of praise and worship, biblical examples and its impact. Praise and worship are powerful spiritual practices that connect believers with God, bringing transformation, breakthrough, and divine intervention. Throughout Scripture, we see numerous examples of individuals and communities who experienced God's presence, deliverance, and miracles through genuine worship. This article explores the significance of praise and worship, highlighting key biblical examples and their impact. 1. Worship as an expression of faith and devotion. Worship is an act of love, reverence, and surrender to God. Jesus emphasized the importance of true worship when he said, "God is spirit, and his worshippers must worship in the spirit and in truth." John 4 verse 24, NIV. Praise and worship align believers with God's will, drawing them closer to his presence. 2. Biblical examples of worship and its impact. A. Paul and Silas, worship that breaks chains, Acts 16 verses 25 to 26. When Paul and Silas were imprisoned for preaching the gospel, they did not despair but chose to worship God. At midnight, they sang hymns and prayed, and suddenly, an earthquake shook the prison, opening all the doors and loosening their chains. This example demonstrates how worship can lead to supernatural breakthroughs and deliverance. B. King Jehoshaphat, worship as a weapon, 2 Chronicles 20 verses 21 to 22. Faced with a vast enemy army, King Jehoshaphat appointed singers to lead the battle with praise. As they sang, "Give thanks to the Lord, for his love endures forever," God caused confusion among their enemies, leading to victory. This shows that worship is a powerful spiritual weapon that brings divine intervention. C. David, a lifestyle of worship, Psalm 34 verse 1. King David, known as a man after God's heart, continually worshipped God through psalms, music, and dance. He declared, "I will bless the Lord at all times, his praise shall continually be in my mouth." His life demonstrates how consistent worship brings God's favor and presence. D. The walls of Jericho, worship that brings victory, Joshua 6 verse 20. God instructed the Israelites to march around Jericho for 7 days, blowing trumpets and shouting praises on the final day. When they obeyed, the walls of the city collapsed, and they claimed victory. This shows how worship, combined with faith and obedience, can break down spiritual and physical barriers. 3. The impact of praise and worship. A. Invokes God's presence. Psalm 22 verse 3 says, "God inhabits the praises of his people." When believers worship, they invite God's presence, experiencing his peace, joy, and guidance. B. Brings joy and strength. Nehemiah 8 verse 10 states, "The joy of the Lord is your strength." Worship lifts the soul, strengthens faith, and brings joy, even in difficult times. C. Leads to deliverance and healing. Worship shifts focus from problems to God's power. Many biblical accounts show that worship results in healing, deliverance, and miraculous intervention. D. Defeats the enemy. Satan fears a worshiping believer. Worship is a spiritual weapon that disrupts the enemy's plans and brings victory in spiritual warfare, 2 Corinthians 10 verse 4. The Bible reveals that praise and worship are more than just music or rituals, they are powerful acts of faith that transform lives. Through worship, believers experience divine intervention, spiritual breakthroughs, and an intimate connection with God. As seen in biblical examples, worship is not just for good times but also a response in trials, knowing that God moves through the praises of his people.